are talking It Came From Below. This one is directed and co-written by Dan Allen and stars Megan Purvis and Becca Harani. It's produced by Jagged Edge Productions, which is headed up by Scott Jeffries. And this is a production company that churns out many low-budget horror B-movies. Now, the movie is clearly influenced by the much kind of more prestigious movie, The Descent, which was directed by Neil Marshall. Regarded as one of the best kind of modern horrors, I think people would probably argue. And that was a truly fantastic movie. And to be fair, it is surprising we haven't seen more movies with a kind of a similar premise, because this film does borrow a lot from that film. And to be fair, as I've said, I'm surprised there isn't more of it, to be fair. So what is the story, you might be asking? So it focuses on four friends as they discover their father has a journal where he has kept these secrets that he has discovered. And one of these secrets is there may well be this creature that is living deep within this kind of cave system. And out of our four friends, we have a brother and sister combo, and they kind of want to kind of prove their father right, get evidence to kind of prove that their father wasn't the kook that everyone kind of says he was. And the other two guys are kind of friends, one of which who really kind of wants to kind of just get a footage of a real creature for financial gain. So our four intrepid friends descend into a labyrinth of caves to find this elusive creature. However, they discover, yes indeed, this creature does exist. However, that might not be the only thing that is in the caves. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. So let's discuss. What works, first of all, with this movie? Let me just say this. One of the most memorable thing for me of this film was the soundtrack. I thought the soundtrack to this was incredible. Really, really good. And it reminded me a lot of the soundtrack from Mindhunter, if you've ever watched that series. But it really kind of underscored and really emphasised some of the kind of the spookiness of some of the scenes here, and made which would have been, you know, a low budget movie kind of elevated to a kind of a movie which does have some kind of genuine kind of creepy moments. So great soundtrack. What else? The creature itself, I think, is quite well realised. The actual makeup effects, the practical kind of suit that this monster suit actually looks pretty good. Pretty good, you know, standard of makeup effects, and it kind of looks in line with what you'd expect a cave dwelling kind of creature to look like. I think it does that pretty well. And wisely, they keep this creature shrouded in darkness to kind of really, make it more realistic in the fact that this obviously is taking place in a cave system, but it also serves as a way to, cover up any kind of like seams that maybe this monster suit might have. But I did think the monster suit was quite effective, and again, kind of a little bit like the music, the actual sound design here, the creature effects, I think are used to great effect, really kind of like, giving that extra level of kind of fear factor. Otherwise, what may have well been ended up being a little bit cheesy. Now, going back to kind of the lights, as I said, the creature is shrouded in darkness, which is a benefit. But one thing which is maybe relatively minor is I like the realistic lighting within the caves. So I've seen a few movies that take place, or at least have long sequences within caves, where they are way overlit. Because let's be honest, if you're in a cave system underground, it is going to be pitch black. And, you see some of these kind of movies where they're clearly kind of obviously got floodlights, so we can see what's going on. And as much as our vision is improved, it's not realistic. But this actually does use kind of the lights from people's headlamps or torches or phones as the kind of really the only source of light here. And although it means the movie is quite dark at times, it does give it certainly a more realistic feel to it, and also emphasises the kind of the claustrophobia you're going to get in these kind of cave systems here, which I thought was quite good. The actual acting I thought was all good by the cast here for the most part. The most part of the acting was good. The Megan Purvis is our main character, and I thought she did an excellent job in the movie Medusa that I reviewed a little while ago, which proves she does have some good acting chops. A lot of these kind of Jagged Edge productions seem to kind of just recycle the same kind of cast here and there, and it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but I think the cast here did a pretty good job for the most part, despite some dodgy American accents, which we'll come on to again. But the acting was fine. The story, although it does take, you know, a lot of elements here from, obviously, the Descent, and even some of the kind of like the shots are very kind of reminiscent of the Descent, shall we say. It still is, in a kind of a nutshell, more an interesting story. And to be fair, I'm surprised there isn't more movies that kind of take cues from the Descent, because that was such a beloved horror movie. So let's kind of transition into maybe what I think doesn't work. Just to kind of touch on something I've already mentioned. The American accents. It's a British film with British actors putting on American accents. And I think the acting is strong. But there are one or two times where you do hear the American accent slip and kind of going to, especially when voices are raised. That tends to be, I think, here where the actors struggle a little bit, and you'll just kind of hear the kind of the English kind of language or the English accents kind of come through a bit more. And sometimes the accents do feel a little bit nondescript. This is certainly not the worst attempt I've heard, but obviously, I mean, I personally wish they wouldn't do it, but they wouldn't have American characters to sell to American audiences. This is why a lot of British films will tend to do this. They'll have these, you know, people put on American accents, so it's an easier sell to US audiences, which is obviously the biggest consumer market for these sort of films. There's maybe one character whose both acting I thought was a little bit subpar compared to the rest, and their inclusion as an actual character I thought seemed a little at odds with the kind of the story. It just seems like, why is this person even here? I don't want to put it out, but nonetheless, that was kind of it's not terrible, but it stuck out as maybe the one weak point in regards to both acting and kind of character, the way the character was written. So the movie has a few other problems on a story basis. Now, some of these are more nitpicky, and some of them are a little bit more kind of significant. So one of the issues I had, now, if you're going to compare this to The Descent, the fact that the cave system in The Descent was newly discovered. So no one had been there. So it was, you know, this is why these things were never discovered before. This one, however, is a huge, great big cave entrance that is simply not believable that this has not been kind of documented beforehand. It's like a huge, massive, proper cave entrance that you can just walk into, and it's quite unbelievable that this is kind of meant to be something which hasn't kind of come out in the public. It's a little bit silly, and even when we go into the caves, you know, they do seem quite roomy and spacious. You don't get the kind of like the you know, having to kind of go through the kind of the very kind of tight, narrow bits of the caves that you haven't said. Bear in mind, this is a lower budget movie, so we have to kind of bear that in mind. But then the kind of budget does kind of seep through. We see people wearing, for example, bicycle helmets rather than you know, proper kind of cave gear and things like this. So there is a little bit of budgetary issues that kind of do show in camera. There are some very, very silly decisions that I feel these characters make, and sometimes quite moronic at times. Now, considering that we have our characters believe, at least two of them believe, that there is a creature in these cave systems, they are woefully ill prepared for it. And if you genuinely believe there is a creature that is dangerous, that is living in these cave systems, why would you not go in there more well prepared? It just seems ridiculous. And we literally have them using you know, some string, like one, you know, little yarn of string, whatever it's called, to kind of like map their way out. It's just like, really? You've bought one kind of like bundle of string to kind of like, again, it's just kind of like a little bit silly. The other plot element that is very wobbly, shall we call it, is what else is in these caves. To me, this doesn't make sense. Here's my thoughts of why it was in there: to save money, to have kind of a story element to pad out the running time that kind of is cheap to film, and so it doesn't require a lot of preparation, but it doesn't really kind of make sense. And when we see what it is I'm talking about, everything is too well groomed. It doesn't really make any kind of logical sense. Again, I don't want to kind of go into it, but it's just ill-conceived and a little bit of a slapdash kind of like, oh, just, you know, we need to kind of pad out the running time, so we're going to have this in there as well. The actual creature is not in the movie as much as you would think. It does pop up, I think, maybe twice, maybe 3 times, but not a lot. It generally speaking, is not in the movie quite as much as you're probably going to think. And, you know, I think the creature design looks effective. I think they could have done more with it, to be honest with you. I didn't know if they necessarily needed this particular other element. I guess they're trying to not make it a literal carbon copy of The Descendant by having another element added to it, but I personally feel that other element was quite weak. It just seemed like cheap filler to me, and that whole kind of process didn't work. There's some kind of supporting characters that come in as well that I think there's interactions that didn't make sense with this movie. So overall, it's not a bad film, I don't think, but it ends up just being a little bit silly and having some kind of quite head-scratching kind of moments in there, and not as really as exciting as maybe you would hope. But it's certainly watchable, and it's not kind of like eye-rollingly bad as kind of like some of these kind of movies that I've reviewed from this production company. As it stands, I'll give it a 5 out of 10, a kind of average movie in my rating. So certainly not bad, certainly watchable, but elevated by some things like I said, the music, the sound design, the actual creature effects, but then detracted by some silly story elements and things like that. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.